You're listening to the AV-IT Amplifier. Each week, we'll feature voices and ideas that need to be amplified in the higher education and pro-AV IT communities. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. And now here's your host, Ryan Gray.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for refreshing your feed for the AV-IT Amplifier. I am Ryan Gray, your host, as per usual, and we are back for week 2 with Dr. Kellie Campbell. Kellie, thank you for coming back to talk with us. I've got some more questions for you, but would you please remind everybody who you are and what you do?
Yes. Well, Ryan, thank you for having me on again. I'm thrilled to have the chance to talk to you. Our last conversation went so quickly, so happy to be back for another episode here. Yes, Kellie Campbell. I am the Chief Information Officer and Vice President of Technology for the Vermont State Colleges System in beautiful Vermont. Born and raised in Vermont, Northeast Kingdom, and have the chance to now live just north of Burlington with my partner and my 2 adorable babies. So
that's awesome. So the Northeast Kingdom, is there a king? Is there some type of monarchy up there that I'm not aware of in Vermont?
No, it is if you look at a map of Vermont, it is the northeast part of Vermont, very rural, and there's a whole history lesson there, but it is just a section of Vermont referenced as the Northeast Kingdom for folk that live up there. So. That's
awesome. You should also know that when people from Vermont refer to parts of their state as rural, and I'm in Arizona, where like the county that my college serves is like larger than Connecticut. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
for sure.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, I'm sure it's
exactly.
real rural up there. You know what I'm saying? You have to drive at least 4 minutes to get to the next little town. You didn't know you were going to get mocked to start this one. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. I will say, compared to where you are, Ryan, I have a feeling we really are rural up there, but
I don't know. Well, all right. We don't have to do that, but yeah.
We'll negotiate it.
Exactly. Okay. And then one other question that I wanted to ask and it's never come up. So why not ask you in front of other people, which is, So 2 questions. First off,
yes.
Most people I'm sure pronounce your last name Campbell instead of Campbell. Yes. So first, why is that the name, and how much time have you spent trying to clarify that for people over time?
Well, so here's what's funny is my husband and I took my husband's last name, and he says Campbell. And I don't know what it is. I say Campbell. And so we pronounce it both differently, and we fight about it. And he's like, well, it was my original last name. And I'm like, well, you know what? I had to take it, and I'm going to personalize it. So we just do our own different vibe. It's just a thing. And my husband's like, it's not worth fighting about it. Like, you do you. So I think it's just the way I've pronounced it. And so but I will say, and over the years, for anybody that's known me, I don't worry as much about the last name or my pronunciation. I'm just very committed to the IE in Kellie.
Okay.
That's where I'll nitpick is the IE. Kellie with the IE. And then whatever people do with the last name, if they want to side with my husband, fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hysterical. That's actually, I'm so sorry. I'm expecting, 3 generations back, we owned a camp. It was Camp Bell. And so we've kept it up. No, it's just
spouse conflict, right? I'm sure we all have them.
It's a little reminder like, all right, I may have taken your name, but listen, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I can walk it away. And that's
exactly.
Pretty good. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Camp Bell, everybody. That's what we will do. Okay. So, before I launch into my other question, so you mentioned last episode, which if people didn't hear, please go back and listen to it, because you're gonna get a level of wisdom that you won't ever get from me, which is why we have smarter people than me come on and talk. But you mentioned that your start in IT came through AV, and the joke of everybody who works in AV is that nobody ended up in it on purpose. Everybody accidentally stumbled through a door or tripped over something one day and landed in working through AV. So twofold, which is, how did you end up with that? And now as a CIO, what do you need and expect from your people who work in classroom technologies, AV, and similar kind of platforms?
So this is one of my favorite stories to tell because it's near and dear to my heart, of where I think it's really, I would not be where I am today without this story. So I I'm a graduate of St. Michael's College in Colchester, Vermont, and I started my higher ed experience my freshman year, and it was a very hard transition for me. Really, just this whole new world that I was so ready for and so not ready for. And I remember very vividly 2 weeks into the semester just being like, I don't know if I can do this. This is just not, I just, we joke, Ryan, that we're very kind of extroverted, empathetic, connected people. And I remember I'm like, it's been 2 weeks since I hugged somebody, right?
Yeah.
I'm not just going to go up and hug somebody random, although I could have. But so I remember really struggling. And it was, that week that I actually got paperwork for my work study position, and it was assigned to IT media services. And I remember being like, this is a joke, right? Like, really, a joke. And I went with full intention to have the supervisor sign off. I was going to go to a different work study position. And I went up, and I'll share his name, Rick Leggett. Dear friend of mine. He actually just passed away this past year, so very, very close to my heart. And but he had a whole following of us students. And I remember sitting down with him and was like, "There's just I need to transfer out. This is not my vibe. Like projectors and fixing, troubleshooting. No, I did like me, no." And I remember him telling me, "Give me 2 weeks. Just give it a chance." And later that year, I became a student lead. And then into my sophomore year, I became a student manager. And it just became my home. It became my community. And he just instilled such a confidence and ability in me and taught me and was real intentional. And I think also at the time, I was the only young woman working in that department. And I think he really saw that and valued that and wanted to help retain me. And it just became my vibe. It just became my community. And I'm so thankful to Rick and the community that was there just really wrapped around and supported me. It gave me this kind of confidence and I think just really built the foundation of who I am today, just being in this space of, it was so not about the hardware, right? But it was about the engagement of bringing technology to people, troubleshooting things, solutions, architecting, etc. And so I stayed in the AV world for some time, and then I transitioned into kind of instructional and educational technology. But I'm always thankful to Rick for that story. And, I think doing AV work, and I now am lucky enough to have a manager of learning spaces that supports kind of our whole state, all of our learning environments, all of our AV across the state, and a team that works for him. And I think, what do I expect? What do I look for in that team? This is a theme to the last recording we did, Ryan, is the connection of people and technology. And it's not just about putting technology in spaces so people can do what they need to do. It's about connecting with people, problem solving, finding out what's working. How do we improve the student experience? And I think I so commend my team because they're so intentional about that and the solutions we put in place. So people-centric first, that's what you're hearing as a theme here, making sure we're serving our students, and the technology comes secondary, but really encouraging that team to think thoughtfully about that. So, yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I congratulate you on having what is at top the second best AV team in the nation, because
you're number one, right?
Yeah,
you're allowed to be as the host. You're allowed to be. We can negotiate it offline later, right?
That's right. That's what we can do. Okay. So a theme of what you mentioned before and other is being an extrovert, right? And so I'll soapbox for a second, which is there's a lot of people out there who are introverts and look at like being an introvert as being difficult because it does like. A lot of work, especially leadership work, takes a lot of time with other people, and when that pulls on your energy and you have to recover, like that's a challenge. But I think there's a flip side to being an extrovert, which you just kind of brought up there, which was as a young person going into a new environment and like going, okay, I'm an extrovert, but I'm not getting connected with people. Extroverts are dependent upon other people, right, in a way that maybe introverts aren't. So, as a Padawan learner of your extroversion, how have you managed the energy balance of being an extrovert in both your career and life?
I've always seen it as a positive. I think it's really propelled me to where I am, and it helps me sustain the level of work and the schedule that I have. I also have been reflecting a lot about where it's not a negative, but where I need to find balance. And I think sometimes there's this joke that maybe the older you get a little more introverted in you. I will say I'm still an extreme E, and I've done the whole lining up my team and seeing where I fall on the scale. We've always just as a way to get to know people in our team, right? And I still fall way by myself in the extreme E section. But I've come to appreciate more the balance of some solo time, some quiet time, some need to recharge. And I think I found not only the older I'm getting, as I'm, a very busy mom right now, and wife, and just partner and daughter, and all of the identities that I love, but all of them require me to be constantly on. And so I will say the older that I'm getting, I am appreciating the values of more that you see more in introverts. And actually nothing like a kid that you made to see that, right? Like I see this in my daughter and I see this in my son. My daughter is more me. And what I worry about is her mother is like, that girl is going to get burnt out. Like, at what point does she need to recharge? And I'm like, oh, but she's me. So, life lesson, right? And then my son, I see he's more like my husband, and he's more introverted, yet can like pop out into fun extrovert, but then just likes, and just seeing the uniqueness of my children and where I worry and want them to thrive. It's been a lot of self-reflection. And it's helped me to think about, like, in my schedule and in my life, I love my extrovertism, but needing to kind of find balance and make sure that I have time to reflect, time to be solo. And I think that's so important. Even extroverts, Ryan, can get burnt out, right?
Yes.
So a little bit of self-care has been critical to help balance the energy that I have. So.
Well, I think, and again, you mentioned the first thing, like, therapy, and having, like I said, a personal trainer for my mind and emotion has helped really find, like, when are you just chasing dopamine in a way that's not productive versus doing true self-care and some of those things that have been really valuable,
For sure.
As I get older too.
Oh, it's so important. And I will say, I talked a little more about therapy in the first session, Ryan, but I will say one activity my therapist did with me, I should source her, but confidentiality. But, I think she's really helped me think about where I spend my energy and my time, and really being intentional about, like, if I drew a circle and I thought professionally and personally about where I give my time versus like in my values, and am I putting my energy in the right places? And I think extroverts at time, we just chase, and we're busy, and we talk, and we and making sure that my work in doing that is really core. Yeah. Not only to who I want to be as a mother and a wife and a daughter and all those identities, but who I want to be as a leader. And so, it's a plug for that self-awareness that I don't always give myself time to do, but I'm trying to be better about as I navigate this life.
Nice. And if you don't, I'm sure your therapist will shame you into it.
Exactly. Exactly. It's exactly true.
Nice. All right. Very hard-hitting question for you.
Okay.
What is the scariest animal?
Oh my gosh. Oh, snakes.
Snakes. Why?
I don't know. Actually, I just had this conversation with my 5-year-old son the other night. He brought home this massive book of snakes. And every night we read, right? And he always wants me to read the snake book. And I just am like, Ollie, I just can't get down with this. And I don't know what it is. The creepy, crawly, slithery. It's just, I can't get down with it. Yeah. That's why I live in Vermont, Ryan, partially, right? There's we have some snakes, but it's very non-threatening.
Yeah, you probably got those like little water snakes and stuff like that. No big rattlers or anything like that. Ever found a snake in your house before?
No.
All right, come on down.
Yeah. No, I actually have a good friend that lives in Arizona, and every time I go down there, I'm like, you've searched the house, right? There's nothing here.
Well, I'll just say, snakes aren't that big a deal to worry about. Scorpions, those are, certain kinds of, those are the ones to worry about, but what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a advertisement for Arizona. We have lots of things that can hurt you. But no, it's the same thing. Like that thing about snakes, and that is so deep in the human brain, right? Why do they creep us out, man? Because our ancestors survived because they were creeped out by those things and stayed away from them. And so we're just go the whole animal kingdom. And the snake, I'm like, no, because I can't eat it. I don't use it for anything. It's not helpful and it can bite me. I don't know why exactly.
Yeah.
So go out there and eat the rodents that I don't want in my house, but don't come in. You know what I'm saying? So.
Oh, for sure.
That's awesome.
You can keep your snakes in Arizona. Okay.
Yeah. But come to Arizona and see them. They're wonderful as long as they're in a, enclosed environment and you know that they're there. Okay.
Right.
So here's a question. What's something that you've recently changed your mind about?
That is a good question. And I don't want to get political here, right? But I will keep it broad. I think about this a lot as not only as a leader, but I think probably more intentionally as a mother to two young children. I think a lot about the state of the world. I think a lot about our country, and I think a lot about our community and our people. I'm trying to be more open to other perspectives. I wouldn't say that maybe doesn't get to the heart of your question, Ryan, like change my mind about, but I think it's this willingness and understanding that, especially coming off of the most recent election, I think we just know that it highlighted for me just how different people think and how critical it is, not only as like higher education leaders in our country, right? But in my own state, how do I build more bridges for difficult conversations, and how do I make sure that I'm more open to those difficult conversations? I think it's so important to have those right now.
Yeah.
And to create community and space for those conversations right now. And how do I teach my children to navigate those conversations? I think conflicting conversations can be really, really hard for people. But at the end of the day, conflict comes, and many times, from people caring deeply about something. So unpacking what that is and being more mindful and open to it is something that, from a headspace perspective, I've had to kind of challenge myself on. And I think I've always done that in some capacity, but now even trying to be even more intentional about it, given the state of our nation and what things are looking like. So always learning, right? Always learning.
When I think
so.
To that point, there's, how many conversations have you been in, or everybody knows, like, and someone goes, well, I just don't understand those people. I just don't understand how people could think that. I just don't understand. And like, it's a rhetorical question, but when are we willing to turn it into an actual question?
Exactly.
Which is, I don't understand how that, but they do. You know what I'm saying? At what point do you turn it into something that says, the future or whatever is going to be about trying to understand and make that understanding go multiple ways. So,
well, I mean, I think that is what the work that we have to do right now. And I also am somebody who, I've really had to just shift my energy. A lot of my service work, my husband will joke with me. He's like, oh gosh, if you go somewhere and you see something not working, the next thing I know, you're trying to be on the board and help fix and address everything, right? Like, can you just chill out? Mm-hmm. And I think I've really had to change my mindset too and say, okay, I'm in terms of what I talked about a moment ago through therapy, right? Like my bubble where I put my time. I've really tried to change my energy and focus on, like, change starts in your community, and it starts really small and it grows rapid from there. And so just a mind shift of, while we're trying to navigate these difficult conversations, trying to shift my energy and be like, let's problem solve in our own communities, localize it. It can start with coaching a kid's basketball team or volunteering at the library or something small, but that's where these moments of change and collaboration happen. And so it's just trying to focus and channel my energy into something I can control. Not easy, but trying.
All right. That's good advice. I love that perspective. Because it's easy to look at something, see it, and go, okay, I'm going to run headlong into this thing and not be able to make a difference at it. And that's true.
That's the core of my therapy right there, Ryan.
Yeah. All right. See, we're
We're digging. We're
All right.
digging.
I'm going to change this
good.
to
Okay.
technology therapy podcast or something like that.
There you
go. Okay. So if you could have a talent that you don't have, what would it be?
Ooh. Oh, these are some good reflective questions. Here's what I think I would say to that question. First of all, I think there's this like, don't have and inability to do are two very different things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think people are extremely capable if they set their mind to it. So I will say that this past summer, I got back into running. I used to run before I had my two cute children, but those children took over my body and destroyed everything. Getting back into long distance running, I did it at one point. I want to get back into it. And I think it is something that I could do if I put enough energy and commitment into it.
Okay. So then you're all right. Good. How then do you go about doing that in your life? How do you turn and again, this question may just be for me. How do you go from, I know I have done in this past. I know I've enjoyed it. I know what it means. I know it would be good. No. But I feel like my time is full. What am I going to do today, tomorrow, next week, next month to actually put that into practice?
Yeah. So it's funny, right? Sometimes when I challenge myself, I'm like, what would I say to my daughter? What would I say to my son? So start small, right? And I think we talked about this in the last episode when I talked a little bit about change in our IT structure that we built across the state of Vermont. If you don't know where to start small. So I think one of the ways that I've done it is started to write out, I did some 5Ks this summer and I ran very slowly, but I ran. Right. And I think it's just starting small and then building on top of that. And I think a lot of times in life, when we see things that interest us or there's something that we want to do, like looking at the whole can be really overwhelming, right? Yeah. It's just natural that it can be. So breaking things out into bite-sized pieces, I think is probably the way that I will. And once there's not snow and cold here in the state of Vermont and I can get outside, that will help.
That'll be better.
But starting small, I think, is key. And then eventually these building blocks grow, right? So that, I think, is my objective too. I don't know if you'd call running is a talent. It's an art for sure. But I think, people can work up to anything they really set their mind to, even if it's not perfection. So
cool. I agree. All right. So then that brings it in, because you said, do a couple of 5Ks as an extrovert trying to run is having a race, a public event involved in it, an important part versus just finding satisfaction of running by yourself.
That's funny you say that, because I literally, what motivated me to get off my bum and do that this summer was organized people-centric events, Ryan. And I think just knowing that for myself and then trying to, I'm navigating it in between. And then if I have something scheduled that I'm accountable to, I can't not show up, and
exactly.
I can't fail. So
you got to attach it to something that has visibility and accountability. And yeah. All right. Exactly. I knew the answer at the beginning. I was just hoping you had some other, but yeah, 100%. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So in the movie of your life, what is it called and who plays you?
Oh boy. In the movie of my life, maybe it is just like where I am right now, but I'll call it like trying to figure it out. Maybe that's the title, trying to figure it out, trying to navigate it. I think it's funny, right? I again, this is going to be mostly now back to my therapy, but I think there's been a lot of things in my life that I've been so lucky and privileged to obtain that have required really hard work, and I've had a lot of support. And I've always been somebody who has been like, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? Right? I've navigated my life professionally that way. I've navigated my life personally that way. And not to say I've done it all. I mean, there's still so much more that I want to do, but I am at this place now of like, I don't necessarily need to know what's next, and it's really uncomfortable. But my therapist would say discomfort is good and it's growth. And I think there's this place professionally for me right now where it's not as much proving that I can do something. It's more, do I want to do something? And I think personally, same thing. And trying to figure out where I want to spend my time, trying to figure it out. And so I think it's just this mantra I'm in right now of just trying to kind of slow down and enjoy what I have and be appreciative and reflective, which is, different dynamics for me. And just continuing to try to figure it out. As for who would play me, I have no idea. That is a really good question. I think a lot of the values I have, I don't know, it might not be somebody who is alive today. It may be somebody who's passed. And I say that because my great-grandmother is somebody who lived through a lot of history and a lot of dynamics. But at the core, she was always authentic and kind, and was able to just accomplish a lot in her life, but really continue to do that with like real authenticity. And so I don't know, maybe she would come back and play that role. I like to say that I have a lot of her values and I strive to continue to be like her. But I think we're just, we're in a time, no matter your age, no matter how you identify, everybody's just trying to kind of find happiness, find peace, and continue to figure it out. And there is no age, I'm coming to learn, where you figure it out. You're just always adapting, and you're always bending. And that's the reality, is uncertainty is the most certainty in life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, sort of the title of trying to figure it out or something, like seems like I've found more and more explanations of experiences or talking to people about things instead of declarative statements that can summarize something. There's like something that ends in a question mark or something that ends with ambiguity ends up being more accurate simply because it can take into account the uncertainty, of what most people's experience is, rather than trying to, and maybe it's just that people are more comfortable talking about things in terms of uncertainty rather than like having your act together meant I can explain something in concrete terms. Now, wisdom can come more through ambiguity and comfortability in ambiguity rather than I don't know, the alternative to ambiguity, whatever that word is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I think it's a value that I try to carry into my work every day. I think there is this perception of once you're in this position, you've made it. And I think vulnerability, I talked a lot about values, but vulnerability is probably one of the most common values that I'm carrying forward right now, because people need to know, right, that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to be figuring it out. And even at kind of quote my level, similar experience, right? So I think that's a really important value we need to carry forward for our teams right now, and just as people are trying to navigate the world.
Agree. Okay, same last three questions for everybody. Ready?
I'm ready.
Third to last question, which is, what is a question you wish people would ask you but nobody ever does?
Personally or professionally? Do you have a preference there? Doesn't matter.
Up to you.
Yeah. I guess I would say, and maybe this is for my higher ed executive leaders that maybe, like, are you okay? And I say that because, like, I've been on both sides. I've been in the seat where it's a lot of assumptions and frustrations with leaders. They should do this, they should do that, like this kind of a lot of assumptions. And now that I'm in that seat, I think I receive a lot of those assumptions and criticism, right? And I think it's this maybe empathy and understanding that the work I do is really hard. Like, I love it and I work my bum off every day, and it's hard. And I wish we could, when it comes to leadership and followership, I wish we could be more intentional about asking one another, where do you need help? How can I support you? Now, I say that there are definitely people that are good about doing that, but I think there's always these assumptions that are just not correct. And I wish we could just like break that dynamic. Now, accountability and shared accountability are very important values to carry forward. There are definitely instances where there are leaders who need to be held accountable and vice versa. But I think if I'm localizing it for my own experience, just a little more let's limit the assumptions and ask one another how we're doing more authentically.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Okay, well, somebody out there, go ahead and ask. She's ready. She's ready for that question. Second to last question. If people wanted to find or get in contact with you, how would they do so?
Yes, I think I referenced this in the last conversation we had, Ryan, but I believe so strongly that the work that we have to do in higher ed to serve our students and to serve our communities has to be done collaboratively. And so I am always one who loves to collaborate outside of my kind of immediate network, and especially with some other higher ed leaders and colleagues. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. I'm also happy to connect over email. My email, if you don't mind me sharing, is K and then my last name, Campbell, at VSC, Vermont State Colleges.edu. And I would look forward to learning from others, collaborating with others, and trying to navigate it with others. So thanks for the chance to share that.
Thank you. And I encourage everybody to do so. And make sure you spell it Campbell, not Campbell, or it won't get to the right person. It'll end up to your husband, I think. I don't know is who that gets delivered to the other address. Okay. And then finally, last question, which is the old school newscasters all used to have a sign-off phrase for their shows, like good night and good luck or other things like that. So what is Dr. Kellie Campbell's drop the mic sign-off phrase?
Oh boy, Ryan, that is a great one. I feel like it would be something around self-care. I don't know what that lingo or phrase is, but I think it's just important to reiterate, and I think this is the theme of our discussions, that it's a lot to be a human right now in this world. And I say all of that knowing I carry a lot of privilege. So there are a lot of others that I know struggle more than me. So I think it's a combo of self-care and check in on others. I think it comes back to just humanity and being humans at the core of all that we do. And so just some phrase that I can't think of right now that would be like intentional about that.
Well, hand it to your team, let them workshop something and bring you a recommendation. Right. You know what I'm saying?
There we go. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Make a shirt out of it, right?
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing so much. I enjoy it because there's so much of what you do that speaks to me, but I think it speaks to a lot of the challenges that people have every day, and you're so transparent about talking about it that I appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time.
Well, once again, Ryan, thank you for creating the platform to share and navigate, and I appreciate being in community with you. So thanks for the time.
Thank you for listening to the AV IT Amplifier. Join us again for next week's episode when we'll welcome a new guest who you'll want to hear from. We promise. Your host has been Ryan Gray. He's on the tweeters at Ryan_A_Gray, or find him on LinkedIn to connect. Please subscribe and give the show a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. Everyone hang in there, go easy, and we'll be back next week.